Alright, today we're going to be taking a look at my Korvold EDH deck. It's pretty simple, the commander and the way he works. He's a 4/4 flyer for 5, 2 colorless, and 1 each of black, red, and green. He has a bit of a downside in that when you play him, you have to sacrifice something, but the way he works is pretty good, and it feeds off of sacrificing other permanents. So he reads, whenever you sacrifice a creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on him and draw a card. Now, the two ways I look at this is I buff him every time I sacrifice something. So I want to build this deck kind of like Voltron or Battlecruiser Magic, where I just throw a bunch of equipments on him and hit face, because he'll be constantly getting bigger. And it lets me draw a card whenever I sacrifice something, so it lets me churn through my deck faster to find different bits and pieces. Now, I've divided this up into a few core segments, starting with the creatures. We have, I believe, something like 20, 25. I'll put a number up in the video. But I've divided them into a few categories. For the mana ramp section, we've got Llanowar Elves, Birds of Paradise, Paradise Druid. They're all pretty self-explanatory. And Deathrite Shaman, which is pretty good because it interacts with my graveyard or anyone's graveyard, and I'm going to have a lot of lands and creatures in my graveyard because I'm sacrificing them for my commander, so he's pretty good. Next, we have creatures that capitalize off of something else dying. We have the classic Blood Artist. Whenever a creature dies, an opponent takes 1, you gain 1 life. Poison Tip Archer, which has the similar ability, but it's each opponent loses 1 life. I'm not gaining anything, but it's also a reach, death touch, 2/3, which is good for stopping an annoying commander or big flyer. We have Eater of the Dead, which, depending on how you play it, can be kind of self-harmful for the deck, but I like it. It's pretty good. If I'm playing against someone with a graveyard strategy, I can just get rid of all their cards in their graveyard, their creatures anyway, for free, because I don't actually have to have anything for him to activate his ability. And then Gerard, which works as both getting bigger for each card I have in my graveyard, and he lets me sacrifice stuff, which works in conjunction with my commander pretty well. Next, we have creatures that the rest of the creatures in the deck, some of them just make tokens, like Liege of the Hollows, which is more creatures to sacrifice, Nath of the Guildleaf, and Emrakul's Evangel. He's pretty good because, say I make a bunch of 1/1 squirrel tokens with Liege of the Hollows, I can sacrifice them to the Evangel to get 3/2s instead of 1/1s, which I can then sacrifice again, drawing more cards off of my commander. Then we have some generic stuff. Sorcerer's Broom, one of the newer cards. I thought it was pretty cool. Make token copies of Sorcerer's Broom for 3 every time I sacrifice something, which is alright, but I might take him out in the end. Let's see. Now we have creatures that allow me to sacrifice other creatures. Bloodflow Connoisseur, Bloodthrone Vampire, Sadistic Hypnotist. He's a good combo with Nath. It just dumps my opponent's hands. Gives me a whole army of tokens. Priest of the Forgotten Gods is pretty good because this lets me draw additional cards and it gives me mana for sacrificing my creatures. So it's kind of like an altar in that way. Creatures that sacrifice themselves. Oops, sorry about that. Bumped the camera. Caustic Caterpillar works like an extra copy of Naturalize. Sakura Tribe Elder, more mana ramp. I can sacrifice it, draws me cards. Burnished Heart, same thing. Hexmage, it's okay. I'm not playing Dark Depths, but by itself it can be pretty helpful. Reassembling Skeleton, just a creature that I can repeatedly sacrifice. And then Priest of Yawgmoth, one of my pet cards. I like it. I have a lot of artifacts in the deck. Some of them are pretty high CMC, relatively 4 or 5, that kind of thing. And if I'm done with them, I can just sacrifice them for black mana, which I can use to play more spells, combo off, that kind of thing. He's pretty helpful mid-combo. Sorry about the glare there. Next up, we've got artifacts. Now, I only play 2 actual altars, rather, amongst my artifacts. Altar of Dementia, which is good if I'm trying to mill someone out, or mill myself out, because I have some cards that benefit from being in the graveyard. Ashnod's Altar, pretty self-explanatory, 0 cost sack ability. Yeah, then we have some mana ramp in the form of Soul Ring. Everyone needs a Soul Ring. Basalt Monolith. Expedition Map. It's a sacrifice trigger. Gets me land. And Chromatic Sphere. Similar scenario. Gets me a mana. I can sacrifice it, which then lets me draw cards. And Mind Stone. Also mana ramp. Which also has an added sacrifice ability, which is pretty good. Then we have some utility artifacts, like Elixir of Immortality, which is good, just shuffles my graveyard back into my deck, gains me life. Tormod's Crypt, gets rid of a graveyard, it's a sacrifice ability for 0, helpful once I have my commander out. Lodestone Bauble, similar thing, gets land back, or if my opponent has a lot of land in the graveyard, I can stack their deck so that they're drawing nothing but lands for a little while. Let's see, Credit Voucher, I don't know how I feel about this card. I might take it out. I could see it being useful, but it's 4 mana to shuffle cards into my deck and get them back. I should probably just play Wheel of Fortune in the deck once I get another copy of it. Skill Clamp is good. Lets me draw more cards if I equip it to a creature, then sacrifice it. Snake Basket puts out tokens. Pretty self-explanatory. It's also a sacrifice trigger. And Nevernal's Disc. It's removal. You need removal in most decks. And then we have Sword of Vengeance and Blade of the Blood Chief, just to put on my commander so he can get in for more. Blade of the Blood Chief is good if I'm sacrificing a lot of things. Buff him up. This gives him some evasion in Trample, Haste, First Strike. Not evasion, just ability, sorry. I'm going to put a Swiftfoot Boots in here once I find another copy. I just couldn't find one when I put the deck together. Maybe a Lightning Greaves. I don't know if I need both. And then next up we have enchantments. So we've got a few easy ones. Parallel Lives. That'll become a doubling season. I don't have a doubling season, so this is going to have to do. Gets me more tokens from my Snake Basket, my Evangel, my Gaia's Liege, that kind of thing. Necropotence, just a good card. I might end up taking this out, though. It doesn't really fit with the theme of the deck, but it's a powerful card in black when you need it. Revel in Riches. This would be better with Grave Pact or Dictate of Erebos, or I think Erebos was the Black God. Anyway, pretty good. Gets me treasures. It's a win con if I can't get through with my commander. It comes in handy. Itlamok, Poor Man's Cradle, pretty simple. Lets me filter through the top couple cards in my deck, make some mana. And then Squandered Resources. This is a card a lot of people don't know about. Lets you sack land. They don't have to be untapped, so I can tap my land for mana, sack it for another one, draw a card from my commander, and put a counter on him. So with one land, I make 2 mana, draw a card, and put a counter on my commander. That's pretty good. It works better in conjunction with Crucible of Worlds, which I will be putting into the deck. And it's just a fun card. Lets me sack things. No one really plays it. That's why I like it. Alright, instants and sorceries. Most of what I have for instants and sorceries is removal, mana ramp, and utility cards. For mana ramp, we have Untamed Wild. Lets me get a basic land. Nature's Lore lets me get a forest, which can be a bayou, taiga, something like that, or just a basic land if I need it. Haro is good. More mana ramp, also has a built-in sacrifice, so if I have my commander out, I'm drawing more cards. Let's see. Lots of removal. Disintegrate. Removal. It's just a fireball. Can be a good finisher. Tragic Slip. Almost every turn I could play this, a creature's died, so it's big creature removal. We have a little bit of mass removal in Electrickery for cheap creatures, and Kindred Dominance. I don't really play any one particular creature type, so I most often will just name something stupid like Thrall or Oof, and if no one's playing one of those, then they go away. All the creatures die. Some more single removal. We have Devour Flesh, which works for me too. If I don't have anything that lets me sacrifice something, I can gain some life. Sack a creature, draw a card. You know the drill. Artifact Blast. No one ever expects this card. It's hilarious. Counter someone's turn 1 Soul Ring. That kind of thing. Fling. I have a French version here. I didn't have an English copy. Sacrifice a creature, deals damage. Pretty good. Beast Within. Just good removal. Can hit a land if I need to. Liliana's Triumph makes my opponent sacrifice things. I really just play this because I have the promo version. Go for the throat. Pretty straightforward. Return to Nature. This is just better Naturalize because it can also exile a card from a graveyard. And I had a foil one, so why not? And then Pox. This is a really fun card because if I have my commander out, it benefits me a lot more than it hurts me. But otherwise, it's fun. I used to play like this weird deck where I could turn 1 Dark Grip Pox and everyone at the table would hate me. But it's just a fun card. I like it. And then we have utility cards like Second Harvest. Duplicates tokens. I don't really have much token generation in the deck, so I might take this out. And then we have some tutors in Diabolic Tutor and Demonic Consultation. This card's fun, but more often than not, I'm milling 30 cards to hit the one thing I want. Or it's in the top 6 and I just kill myself with it. Some Graveyard Recursion. We have Treasured Find, which is good in conjunction with Yawgmoth's Will, because I can cast Yawg's Will, play Treasure Find, it get exiled anyway, then I can return this to my hand and play it again next turn. And unfortunately, my only copy of Yawgmoth's Will is a unglued copy. Someone altered it. I'm not the biggest fan, but it was cheap because it was altered. And then we have Down and Dirty. 4 mana Hymn Torok. That side's really bad. 3 mana returning a card to my hand. That's better. That's what I usually play. That's it for the bulk of the deck. And next we just have lands. Pretty straightforward. 3 color mana base. We have some rainbow lands like Command Tower, Gemstone Mine, Opal Palace, City of Brass. Pretty straightforwards. And then we're just using some of the 2 color lands I had laying around. I don't have any Rakdos stuff because I never really played Rakdos, so it's mostly Gruul and Golgari lands. So Woodland Cemetery, Llanowar Wastes, Bayou, that's seen better days, Temple of Malady, Carplusian Forest, Taiga, Rootbound Crag, Sheltered Thicket, Temple of Abandon. Now, my mana base is in no way perfect. I'm sure you could do better. This is just what I had on hand. Then we have some utility lands, like any fetch land kind of card is really good with my commander because I get to draw cards when I use them. So we have Windswept Heath, Rocky Tar Pit, Mountain Valley. These 2 aren't so good, but they do the job. Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, Ghost Corner. I'm going to put in a Strip Mine once I find my binder with them in there. I forget where I put it. And then we have Grim Backwoods, Sacrifice ability, lets me draw cards inherently. 4 mana is kind of steep, but it's okay. Probably would be better off just to play a Swamp, but I have one in the deck. Reliquary Tower, pretty straightforward, no maximum hand size. And Rogue's Passage, which is really good because the way this deck wins most of the time is hitting with my commander. So if I can give him unblockable and then sacrifice my whole board, wipe out my opponent, don't have to worry about it. Unless I have something stupid like a Fog. And then basics. my basic count is what I feel to be optimized for my deck. If you can disagree, you're allowed to have your own opinion. So I have 4 swamps, I think 6 forests, and 3 mountains. I don't really have that many red cards in the deck, and a lot of my lands tap for my dual lands tap for red as well. That's why I'm only playing 3 mountains. This is subject to change once I add or remove cards from the deck, but that's what I'm playing right now. I believe I'm playing 35 lands, which is a bit high. Normally I try and keep it to 30, 32, but for this deck, since a lot of my lands are sacrificing themselves as well, I feel like it's justifiable to play them. And yeah, if you have any suggestions, feel free to hit me up in the comments. If I was to add anything to the deck right now, it would be Sword of Feast and Famine, probably. Crucible of Worlds, Doubling Season, and Swiftfoot Boot would be the few cards I add. And eventually I might put a Prosh in here as well, just because he creates a bunch of tokens. Or I might make it a Prosh deck and run Korvold secondary. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you to like and subscribe or any of that. Do so at your own behest, your own will, I suppose. But it helps the channel, so go ahead. Yeah, if you'd like to see another deck tech, I can put some more together. I have a couple more EDH decks I haven't shown off, and I have updated my elf deck since the last time I showed it off on the channel. So thanks for watching, and have a good night.